Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're looking to visit Egypt or maybe even move to Egypt, you've probably read a lot of stuff online, you've probably watched some YouTube videos trying to figure out what Egypt is really like. There's a lot of negative stuff out there about visiting Egypt and specifically Cairo. I'm here to weigh in on a lot of those negative things that are on the internet. I lived in Egypt for a little over a year, and I can pretty accurately and deeply speak to what's out there on the internet. This video is part of a bigger series about visiting Egypt and moving to Egypt that I'm doing on the channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so that we continue this dialogue between me and you. This is one of the biggest misconceptions that I see. It's that Egypt is incredibly dangerous. I'm from the United States, and in general, crime is much lower in Egypt. Violent crime in Egypt, the rate of it is incredibly low. People do not have guns, people do not have weapons. So overall, the idea that you're gonna go to a place that we associate with a very violent, conflict-ridden region, the Arab world and the Middle East in general. Egypt has a incredibly strong security presence, it has a strong military presence, it has a strong police presence, and especially if you are a tourist, you will be looked after. When I've been walking in Cairo, I have not really thought much about the area that I'm in because I felt really safe. I knew that I wasn't gonna get held at gunpoint, I wasn't gonna get robbed, even though Egypt does have very high rates of poverty. So the idea that poverty and violent crime are directly associated with each other, directly correlated, not always true. If you are worried about anything like terror attacks, it's very simple. Do not go to northern Sinai. You won't be allowed to by the Egyptian authorities, and do your best to stay away from churches there. These are the two biggest targets. Even if you do go to a church service, the likelihood that you'll be mixed up in something dangerous is incredibly low. But if you really want to eliminate the chance of your being involved in some sort of violent attack, if you avoid northern Sinai and Christian centers, churches, it's like 99.9% likely that you will be perfectly fine. Misconception number 2. All of your stuff is going to get stolen in Egypt. I know this is a big thing when you visit big tourist sites in Europe, Greece, Rome. I know this is a big problem, pickpocketing, theft in general. That is basically non-existent in Egypt, and the rates are very low in much of the Arab world. I'm not sure exactly why this is. You really don't have to worry about getting your stuff stolen. If you're in tourist areas, you're gonna mostly have to worry about getting upsold on stuff, and we'll get to that in a second. But it's really just not much of a thing. If you have had that experience, please comment, because again, I'm speaking from my own experience and other people that I know's experience, but of course there are exceptions to what I'm saying. Another thing in Egypt that they're not blowing it out of proportion, but they're letting it mar the rest of their trip is the whole thing of scamming. Yes, scamming is a huge part of visiting tourist sites in Egypt. I have been a victim of it myself, and I know it felt terrible, but there's a really easy way to get over this, and it's just to not give people money at these tourist sites. You gotta understand that wages in Egypt are very low. And so if you're going to, say, the pyramids and somebody's asking you for $20, you tell them to f off. I mean, that's an absurd amount of money that even like upper middle class people are not necessarily making. I mean, I worked in Egypt and I had a very nice job working at a university. I had my accommodation included in my salary, but I was making about $400 US a month. So you really don't need to feel bad for people when you say no to 20, 40, 50 US dollars to have your picture taken on a camel. You just need to be very firm and say no. And if you really want to avoid this and not have to actually do any work yourself, just go with a guide. It's really not something to blow incredibly out of proportion. Yes, people are struggling, they're trying to finesse you, they're trying to hustle and make their money, but if they're asking you for that much money, it's crazy. Just say no or get a guide if you really want. Outside of tourist places, you are not gonna run into that very often. The worst that will happen to you is that you will be upcharged for goods and services like coffee, meals at restaurants, because it's very obvious that you're a foreigner. And I'm gonna make some videos kind of giving ballpark figures to how much stuff costs in Egypt so that you know when you're getting scammed and when you're not being scammed. It's usually not gonna be much more than the regular price. And you know, if somebody gets like $1 or $2 extra from you, sometimes that's just the result of traveling and going to new places and being a foreigner in someone else's country. It doesn't feel good, but you're not the first person that that's happened to. Okay, this is definitely not a misconception, and it's something that I will talk about in more videos. There is an idea that it's not safe for women to travel to Egypt, and there are definitely precautions that women should take. There is definitely a heightened level of awareness and skepticism that women should have, particularly if they're traveling by themselves when going to Egypt. But the idea that women can't have a good time visiting Egypt, I would not say is true. I have known many women from lots of different parts of the world who have spent 18 months plus living in Egypt, and some of them have had really, really wonderful times. However, I do want to say that sexual harassment, catcalling, the general activity of men making women, particularly foreign women, very uncomfortable in Egypt is absolutely a thing. I don't like to judge other cultures that I'm not a part of, but I don't like it. I think it's ridiculous. And you're gonna find a lot of Egyptian people as well who really have a problem with it. And if you decide to not go to Egypt because of this, like, that's totally your decision. I'm not making any excuses for the people who are doing that stuff in Cairo. If you are concerned about this as a woman, the most surefire way to reduce your levels of discomfort, increase your general levels of safety, is to get a local guide. A local guide, particularly a male local guide, will be able to basically shield the crap from you and will let you know and deal with any sort of uncomfortable situation, however unlikely it might be, that could arise. Second, they will tell you where it's gonna be much more comfortable for you to go. I'm thinking knowing what neighborhoods are gonna be more comfortable to walk in, cafes that are gonna have women at them, so you're not the only woman there. Once you have a guide, basically any risk of physical or psychological harm will be dramatically reduced. And then from there, the question just becomes how much staring, how much kind of ocular discomfort can you withstand? I've known some women who have seemingly no problem with men in the street looking at them. I know some women who definitely take issue with that. So it really just depends on what your level of comfort is. But again, I would strongly suggest, if you can, having a guide there, not just to kind of help you navigate what will be comfortable for you and what won't be, but also to have a friend there. I mean, in general, travel is made a million times more enjoyable if you have a local person who is your friend, who is opening doors that really only local residents can open. Okay, another misconception. Egypt is beautiful, but the locals ruin it. I have read this so many times on travel forums, on the internet in general. It is absolute nonsense. I have learned so much from the Egyptian people in my time there. I have met some of the kindest, most loyal, most honorable, and some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life in Egypt. And again, if you are only going to one place for about a day or two and your goal is only seeing tourist sites and you're only interacting with people who are, you know, rabidly trying to get money from you, you might have that outlook as a result. But I really want to encourage you to go out and see the regular Egypt, the day-to-day Egypt, the Egypt that millions and millions and millions of people live in, contribute to. And pretty soon when you get outside of tourist areas, you just manage to learn how to say in Arabic, I don't speak Arabic. You're gonna find that people will be very kind to you. They'll be very accommodating of you, and they'll be so generous. Another misconception, Egypt is very backward and poor. I've seen that discussed a lot, particularly on like Reddit forums, that You know, the Egyptian society is not very developed. The people are themselves kind of underdeveloped, brutish, and not very refined. We need to talk about that a little bit. Egypt for sure has very high levels of poverty. I definitely want to push back on the idea that the society in general is backward. Yes, Egyptian society has lots of problems for sure, and I'm not making an excuse for any of those problems. But what I am saying is that Egypt is not just a country where there was a beautiful, thriving ancient civilization and then dark ages until the present. Even if we just take the 20th century in general, Egypt has been one of the intellectual and artistic and commercial hubs of the Arab world and the Middle East in general, which, you know, touches hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. Egyptian Arabic is the most universally understood dialect of Arabic, is because all of the movies, for the most part, that were coming out of this region were made in Egypt. There has been so much artistic, creative, and intellectual production that has come out of Egypt just within the last century. And this doesn't include all of the big empires that have had lots of cultural and scientific and intellectual developments for the centuries before that. I mean, Cairo was established in, I believe, the 10th century. And even today, yes, the Egyptian economy is pretty heavily struggling. But there are thousands of people doing PhDs. There are thousands of people doing scientific research, very strong arts industry. I hope this video has clarified some things that come up a lot on the internet, or at the very least, I hope I've given you some information to kind of springboard your research further. But please comment any questions that you have, any suggestions, anything you disagree with. Please, this is a open discussion between you, me, and some of the other people who are looking to visit or move to Egypt. So thank you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and yeah, hope to see you soon. All the best.